The lights flickered through the thin mist surrounding Arcadia Station, casting an ethereal glow around the towers, piercing the city's artificial sky. A constant reminder that they were floating above what was once the planet Earth. Now, Earth was merely a shadow of its former self, covered in poisonous deserts and toxic seas. Arcadia, like the other floating cities, was the last hope of a humanity that had failed to take care of its home. Solis stood on the maintenance platform, watching the flickering lights while feeling the constant hum of machinery beneath her feet. It was a familiar hum, comforting even, but she knew that any slight variation in the sound could spell disaster. Something was wrong with the power systems lately, something that the numbers couldn't explain. She ran her hand over the small diagnostic device strapped to her belt, adjusting the data while her eyes scanned the lines of code on the screen. The station was operating beyond its capacity, and Kara, as the aerospace engineer responsible for maintaining the main generators, knew there was no room for error. A major failure here didn't just mean a loss of power. It meant the death of thousands of people. Still thinking about the last failure, Solis? A voice broke the technical silence of the platform. It was Rafe, one of her colleagues, a technician she had worked with for years. He always appeared when she least expected it. "Yes, and you should be worried too," she replied without looking up, keeping her focus on the screen. "The recent fluctuations weren't normal. Something is siphoning power, and I haven't figured out what it is yet." "You see problems in everything," Rafe laughed, leaning against the platform railing. "Maybe you need a break. When was the last time you took one?" "Since... well, you know." Kara stopped typing. It was always like this. Ever since her sister Lila died almost 2 years ago, people around her walked on eggshells when mentioning the past. Lila had also been an engineer on the station, and her death in an accident in the power core still echoed in Kara's mind as an unsolved mystery. "I'm fine," she said sharply, changing the subject. "I'll figure out what's causing this." As Kara walked away from Rafe, heading back into the station, her gaze wandered over the tangled mess of cables and blinking lights that formed the heart of Arcadia. The station was a sleeping giant, a living machine keeping humanity afloat, or at least, keeping those with money and power on top, while the others crowded in the lower levels, struggling for survival. It was hard not to think about her sister. Lila had also worked on these same systems, investigated these same problems. She had died in a power failure, an accident that was never fully explained. And deep down, Kara knew that the truth about Lila was buried in the depths of this monstrous machine. She took the elevator up to the administrative sector, where the station's leaders resided. The facade was clean, futuristic, with white, sterilized corridors, almost inhuman in their perfection. Everything here seemed to work perfectly, unlike the lower levels, where real life happened. When the elevator doors opened, the environment shifted. People in immaculate uniforms rushed by, carrying tablets and discussing reports. It was as if the energy crisis threatening the station didn't exist for them. Kara approached the large conference room, where an emergency meeting had been called to discuss the issues with the generators. The doors of the conference room opened with a soft whisper. Inside, Kara found herself in a completely different environment from the mechanical areas she was used to seeing. Luxurious chairs, holographic screens projecting energy graphs, and representatives from various sections of the station gathered around a long, shiny table. In the back, the tall, imposing figure of Damian Voss leaned over a screen, engaged in a quiet discussion with one of his aides. Voss was the director of operations at Arcadia Station. Tall, well-dressed, always with a calculating look that seemed to strip anyone bare with a single glance. He had the kind of charisma that made people forget to question his decisions. At least, people who didn't know how to look for the cracks behind the polish. "Miss Solis, so glad you could join us," Voss said, his voice resonating with calculated smoothness. We're all eager to hear what you have to say about the recent incident. Kara shot a cold glance in his direction, undisturbed by his presence. She moved to the front of the room, connecting her diagnostic device to the holographic table. The display projected complex graphs into the air, showing the recent energy fluctuations she had identified. "These spikes are abnormal," she began, moving the graphs with a gesture. "We're losing energy in areas not registered in the system. This suggests that something or someone is siphoning resources without authorization." "Are you suggesting sabotage?" Voss asked, a slight smile appearing at the corner of his mouth. "It's not a suggestion," Kara replied. "It's a fact. And if we don't fix it, it could cause a catastrophic failure." Voss's smile faded. He glanced briefly at the other team members before responding. "I'll ensure that our best technicians investigate this thoroughly. In the meantime, keep your team focused on routine maintenance. We don't want unnecessary panic." Kara wasn't fooled by his words. Something in Voss's eyes made her believe he knew more than he was willing to admit. But at that moment, there was little she could do. As she left the conference room, an unsettling feeling settled in. Voss's face, that controlled smile, seemed to always be one step ahead. She knew he was hiding something, but without proof, her word meant little against the power he wielded. However, something deeper gnawed at her. The same feeling she had when she lost her sister. She knew she couldn't trust anyone, but she was willing to risk everything to uncover what was really happening behind the spotless walls of Arcadia Station. Kara walked through the station's white, sterile corridors, her diagnostic device hanging from her belt, but her mind was trapped in the information she had just shared. She knew there was more. There was a dark truth behind Arcadia's energy systems, and Damian Voss was at the center of it. His calculated smile, his carefully chosen words, everything suggested that he was manipulating the circumstances. But how would she prove it? She passed by a large observation window, offering an impressive view of Earth, now a devastated wasteland. Grey clouds swirled in toxic whirlpools, and the planet's surface reflected a reddish hue, as if Earth itself was bleeding from humanity's mistakes. It was a constant reminder that Arcadia Station and the other floating cities were all that was left. Losing Arcadia would mean losing humanity's last hope for survival. Kara arrived at her small apartment in the middle section of the station. It was a simple, functional space, without the luxuries of the upper areas where the elite resided. She threw herself into her chair and activated her personal console. Her apartment was located in one of the maintenance zones, giving her direct access to the energy systems. It was here, in this modest space, that she did most of her work. But tonight, she had another plan. She began hacking into the system's records. Her skill with technology was well known among her colleagues, but Kara rarely used her abilities for anything outside the permitted parameters. This was an exception. She needed answers. She needed to know what Voss was hiding. The first layers of security were easy to bypass, but the deeper she went, the tighter the locks became. She was on the verge of discovering something when a message flashed on the screen. Access denied. System compromised. Contact administrator. Her heart raced. Someone was watching. Before she could react, a notification sounded on the console. Damian Voss is calling. She accepted the call with a knot in her stomach. Voss's face appeared on the screen, calm, but with a subtle glint of menace in his eyes. "Miss Solis," he began, with that smooth voice that now deeply irritated her, "it seems you're interested in areas that are not your responsibility. I'd be very disappointed to find out that you're going against the station's security protocols." Kara remained calm, but her hands trembled. "I was just checking the maintenance records. Something's wrong with the generators, and I need to understand what's causing the failures." Voss stared at her for a long moment, and then his smile reappeared. "Ah, of course. Always so dedicated. However, I suggest you stay on the right path, Kara. Sometimes digging too deep into delicate matters can lead to unexpected consequences." With that, he disconnected. Kara stared at the blank screen, a mix of fear and anger swirling in her chest. Something was very wrong, and now she knew she was being watched. But she also knew something else. Damian Voss was dangerous, and he wouldn't stop until he silenced her, just as he had with her sister. The sound of gears echoed in the maintenance tunnels as Kara moved through the narrow corridors, far from Arcadia security system's watchful eyes. If Voss was monitoring her steps, she needed to be careful. She had decided it was time to descend to the depths of the station, the older, forgotten, and poorly maintained areas. It was there that, according to her suspicions, she would find the secrets Voss was hiding. The lower parts of the station, known as the lower levels, were like a different world. While the inhabitants of the upper zones lived in comfort, those in the lower levels struggled with resource shortages, constant system failures, and poor maintenance. Kara had worked there before and knew it was the perfect place to hide something. No one cared about the problems of the poor. She made her way to a sector that had been sealed off years ago, officially due to structural instability. But Kara knew how to read between the lines. Something else had happened there. She slipped through a deactivated door and entered a dark tunnel, the sound of her footsteps echoing off the metal walls. What she found in the station's depths left her breathless. There, buried in the shadows and hidden from public view, was a power core unlike anything she had ever seen. Its bluish glow emitted a power that made the air around it vibrate. The cables connecting the core to the main systems were clearly a recent addition. There was no way this kind of technology was human. Kara stepped back, her heart racing. This was alien technology, something she had only heard about in rumors and theories. What was Voss doing with this? And how had he managed to hide something so monumental from everyone? Her suspicions were confirmed when she found forgotten documents on a terminal beside the core. The evidence showed that Voss was using this technology to power the station, violating all interplanetary treaties. It was a risky gamble, but it explained why he was willing to silence anyone who got too close to the truth. Suddenly, a light flickered to her right, and Kara froze. She wasn't alone. Kara quickly turned, ready to flee or fight, but the figure that appeared in the light wasn't one of Voss's guards. It was a woman with short hair, scars on her face, and a look hardened by distrust. "I knew someone would eventually find out," said the woman, her voice raspy. "My name is Marla, and you're not the only one who wants to take Voss down." Marla was a former security officer at Arcadia Station, exiled to the lower levels after trying to expose Voss's illegal activities. She had been one of the few who knew about the alien technology, but without concrete proof, no one believed her. Now, with Kara's help, they had a chance to bring justice. Through Marla, Kara was introduced to a small group of dissidents who also suspected Voss's actions. Among them was Yannick, a talented hacker who could access the deepest layers of the station's security system, and Tarek, a mechanic who knew every corner of the lower tunnels. Together, they formed a silent resistance, waiting for the right moment to act. "If we want to stop Voss," said Marla, "we need to expose what he's doing before it's too late. But we can't do it alone. We need evidence, and we need to access Voss's communications without him knowing." Kara looked around at the group and, for the first time, felt a spark of hope. She was no longer alone in this fight. The following days were a race against time. With a plan in place, Kara, Marla, and the rest of the group began coordinating an infiltration into the station's restricted zones. They needed to access the central communications core and collect the evidence that would incriminate Damian Voss. However, Tensions within the station were reaching a boiling point. Energy was beginning to fail in critical areas, and the citizens of the lower zones were revolting. Voss, in turn, was tightening security, and it seemed he was prepared for any internal threat. Kara knew that the imminent power failure was a precursor to total collapse. The alien core was overloaded, and if they didn't act quickly, the entire Arcadia Station could be destroyed. Time was running out, and the pressure on Kara and her allies increased by the hour. As they prepared for the final attack, Kara was overwhelmed by a whirlwind of emotions. The memory of her sister was ever present, reminding her of the price that had been paid to get this far. But even in the face of danger, she knew she couldn't give up. The truth needed to be revealed. On the decisive night, Kara and her group infiltrated the restricted zones, using the lower levels network of tunnels to access the communications core. The path was dangerous, and the oppressive silence within the station's walls only heightened the tension. Any misstep could mean death for them all. Finally, they reached the control center. It was a vast space, full of terminals and servers that controlled all of Arcadia Station's communications. This was where they needed to extract the evidence, and where they would confront Damian Voss. As Yannick worked frantically to hack the systems, Kara kept watch, sensing that something was about to happen. And, as expected, the doors opened with a metallic clang, revealing the imposing figure of Voss. "I knew you wouldn't listen, Kara," he said with a disturbingly calm voice, entering the room as if he had already won. "You don't understand what's at stake here. The alien technology is the only thing keeping us alive. Do you think Arcadia can survive without it?" Kara stared at him with determination. "You killed my sister to hide this. No matter what you say, people have the right to know." Voss sighed, a faint smile of disapproval curling his lips. "I didn't kill your sister, Kara. She chose the wrong path, just like you're choosing now." The final confrontation was about to begin. The tension in the control room was palpable. Kara's group was seconds away from obtaining the necessary evidence, but Damian Voss blocked their path. His face was serene, as if he had absolute control of the situation. But Kara knew he was desperate. She knew that if exposed, all the power he had built would come crashing down. "What you don't understand," Voss continued, "is that survival requires sacrifices. If you destroy the alien energy source, everyone here will die." Kara knew there was some truth to his words. The alien core was overloaded, yes, but it was what kept the station running. Destroying it would mean saving the station in the long run, but in the short term, it would push Arcadia to the brink of death. She glanced at Yannick, who was waiting for her order to destroy or save the files. Marla, on the other side of the room, held a weapon, ready to shoot Voss if necessary. It was an impossible choice. But Kara knew that the truth was more important than convenience. With a nod, she gave the order. "Release the information." As soon as Yannick released the information, Arcadia Station's entire communication system was taken over by the images and documents incriminating Damian Voss. The truth about the illegal use of alien technology, the energy diversions, and the deaths related to his actions spread across every screen in the station. Chaos erupted almost immediately. The citizens, already on the verge of revolt, flooded the streets of the lower zones. The elite, isolated in their towers, were forced to face the wrath of a betrayed populace. Meanwhile, Voss, defeated, tried to escape, but was captured by the station's own guards. His fall was swift and relentless. Kara, however, didn't come out unscathed. During the confrontation, she had been gravely injured. As the chaos engulfed the station, Marla and Yannick took her to a safe area. They had won, but at what cost? With Voss out of power, Arcadia Station began to restructure. The lower areas, long neglected, finally had a voice. The alien core was deactivated, and a new energy source began development. But the process would be slow, and the sacrifices would continue. Kara, now recovering from her injuries, watched everything from her room's window. She had gotten what she wanted. The truth about her sister was revealed, and Voss had paid the price for his crimes. But the station still faced an uncertain future. As she gazed at the distant, devastated Earth, Kara knew that while Arcadia had survived, the fight was far from over. The price of truth was always high, and there weren't always clear winners. But for now she could rest, knowing that, at least for a brief moment, she had made a difference.